Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is OctoMan, and today we are talking about casual games, and we are going to take a look into Plants vs. Zombies, as well as we're gonna start to work on a prototype. So if you want to follow up, feel free to do so. Whenever this video comes out, feel free to pause at any time, in any state. I am absolutely unprepared over here, so we're gonna take a look into what are the odds, what are the common problems you may encounter, as well as let's take a look at pretty quickly what is a casual game actually, and why is it so funny and so important on one hand, and also on the other hand so interesting in cases of why do people like casual games. So first off, before we start over here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course don't forget to thumb up the video later on the live stream whenever you have seen that, and if you like it actually. So with that said, what is a casual game? Again, a casual game is a game which is rather short in duration. Like, you can do this most of the time rather quickly. Let's say we talk about 5-minute games. Let's assume one round of whatever the game is going to be about is going to take never longer than, let's say, 5 minutes, or maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes, somewhere rather small time. So whenever you get the chance, you can play a round or maybe two, but you're still not, well, you don't have to do anything, like you don't have to run through the complete something like a dungeon or whatever. It's more like a rather small thing which can be adding or could add up to, let's say, a rather high amount. By the way, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask down below in the comment section, as well as in the chat. Should be online already over here, so let me know when you have any questions or maybe any ideas for future videos as well, just so you know about it. So why do I talk about casual games today is because I started in the community tab, so maybe you're gonna check it out as well. I started a little thread in which I wanted to know what you guys want to learn about, so I only got 2 answers actually. So we are talking about casual games today. So casual game, again, a 5-minute game which is rather short, which also means which is like it can be literally anything. It could be like something, throw a banana into somebody's face, whatever, or let's take and who's going to be who's going to hit the center, something like a dart game. Like you have to throw 3 darts, and meanwhile you throw these 3 darts, you have like there's a time based something, and you want to be better than your opponent, for example. So casual means you can play this at any time, anywhere, anyhow. You can just dive in, do 1 or 2 rounds, and then you go out of it again. So the same thing is literally happening, or was happening in the past, and probably still is a game which people play, is going to be who is which is the game of Plants vs. Zombies. So if you haven't noticed that, you can check it out anytime you want to, like on YouTube. There's several bunch of videos, as well as check out any other platform. So what is it about? So first off, some enemies, which are going to be these weird looking guys here on the right, they want to they pop up like on the game field. So this is going to be the game field, and they are moving along the lane until they reach the red area. Once the red area has been reached, by that you're gonna lose the game. On the other hand, you are allowed to place, let's say, guns or several different things which are going to shoot in this direction whenever they see as a, like, whenever there's somebody on this lane, they're gonna start to shoot. And you can build as much as you want. Like, you can build one here, you can build one there, you can build one here, whatever and wherever you want to. So, and also there are different gun types. For example, you're gonna have this gun type, which is maybe, let's say, slow but does high damage. Then you probably have this one here, shoots 2 bullets, but the damage is not as much, and so on and so forth. So in total, what you can do as a player, you can try, or you have to try to protect your, let's say, base or whatever these buildings are going to be, or this area, so no enemy, no matter how huge and how heavy that enemy is going to be, is not able to reach this area. Also, there are other things like maybe enemies can be faster or slower. They can do damage to your buildings, or they can steal some of them. So there are hundreds of possibilities for you to pass over here or pass into the game itself. So how does that work? Well, basically, we as a game developer, we just need to define, okay, how do we want to set this one up? How can we build a gun or any other thing, like one of these plants? Literally, how can we put a plant onto a field, on a specific field? How does it shoot in the direction? How does the enemy, whoever that is going to be, has to be spawned at let's say a timeline between one, like a start time and an end time, or somewhere, or randomly. So there's not too much on the field, but also not too small amount. And they're gonna become even heavier over time. And let's assume we do it like Plants vs Zombies, where you start with just one simple, easy gun. And let's assume the more time you play, you're gonna have some currency to build these towers, by the way. So in Plants vs Zombies, there was this little sun currency, like whatever coin thing it can be, and in there it was like a sun or sun symbol, which you need to have in your pool, otherwise you cannot build a gun. And the more guns you have, the more they maybe cost in the future. Also, there might be some other interesting point over here. Let's assume you're going to have another type of a currency. I don't know, I tinted like light blue here, which you maybe randomly find. And this one is maybe something like a, let's say, cash shop item or cash shop currency, so in which you can unlock these new things like new guns, as well as people which don't have too much time to play this casual games are allowed to, let's say, purchase some of these special currency later on in some kind of a shop system, and so on and so forth, in which you can earn some euros or some USD or whatever the currency in your country is going to be. And you can sell literally that amount of things. And let's assume you have like one cash monster or two cash monsters which are dropping these things, and the other ones are probably popping up like out of these monsters, or the enemies, or whoever that is going to be. And then you can build even more towers. So you have to wait for the first approach, then you build the first gun with the first let's say starting cash or whatever that's going to be in here, that's starting suns, and then they're going to shoot them down. You get more as a result because you have destroyed whatever that's going to be. You get more, so you can build more guns, build up a bigger protection. And you can literally build these guns wherever you want, or you can even build them here, but they are going to be destroyed pretty quickly, because when they approach over here, they're going to destroy, do damage, whatever. So this is the idea behind the Plants vs Zombies. And what you can do is you can literally take any theme. It doesn't have to be a plant. It doesn't have to be. It can be any theme. What does it mean? It can be a tank game. It can be a where you have ships, like small ships. I don't know, submarines and all the other things. You can also put in enemies like whatever, any man or people or whatever, and you don't have to like literally shoot them down as they want. You can also use gummy bear if you want to. You can literally take any theme you can think of. This is the cool thing. You can even make this one a spaceship game. So basically, you are in space. You have like these pieces. These are literally. These are some entry points, let's say, to your huge spaceship. And whenever some enemy fighter is going to reach that spot, they're gonna destroy that. Whatever. So, as you can see, a casual game can be super small in its idea. It still has a twist. The twist is going to be like, having some special things like special currency. You need a in-game currency, as well as you need to have a lot of things to unlock. Like, you're gonna start with one starter gun, and you have to purchase in a shop or wherever a secondary gun, so you can build these too. And also, later on, you're gonna have like a selection of guns. Like you can say something like, okay, I only can take 3 or 4 or 10 guns with me, which is absolutely fine over here. So let's assume you can only for one specific round you can take up to, I don't know, five different unlocked gun types. For example, a shield area or a shield gun, probably for the front, or which it has, but it cannot shoot. Then you have these 1-shooter, a 2-shooter. You can have melee things. There are hundreds of possibilities once again, and same thing for spaceships. So how can we take now this idea into Unity, and how can we now say, hey, we want to make a game out of it, how, like a prototype for this? How do we do this and how do we build this up? Let's take a look. Since you now got the idea about the game you want to create, you have a plan right now, which is going to be the most important thing. So how do you want to structure that? What do you need for this game? Only then you are actually able to perform the things you want to take a look into. Once again, if I'm too fast, feel free to pause the video later on when you're looking this one later on. If you are now in the live stream, feel free to ask any questions. Meanwhile, I'm just going over all of these things. So first things first, you want to make sure that you define. Do you want to go 2D? Want to go 3D? Or do you even care? And do you want to go with the camera like top to bottom or back to right or whatever? All of that is something you need to decide beforehand. If I would build a game like that, and I would go in 2D, of course, then my camera stays as is. I just place the tiles wherever I need them and then place the objects on top of these tiles based on sprite renderer components and so on. The other thing is, if you're gonna go 3D, then you probably don't want to do it like that. You don't want the camera to look into the open space because there's probably more to look at it. In my case, I would take the camera, and this is the first thing I need to define. I want to make sure that I put the camera downwards, like 90 degrees on the x-axis downwards, so my z-axis over here from the camera is looking down. If I'm not 100% sure, if I'm pretty much straight over here, I can always go into isometric view, zoom out a bit until I see the frustum if I want to, and I can check literally any of these sides and see if the triangles are okay. Also, I can lift it up, so we are in y-axis up high or even not. Absolutely up to us. Next one, I'm gonna zero out the z-axis so I don't have any weird numbers over there. So I can go back into isometric view or out of isometric view. And now I want to make use of the grid. Because each of them grids is like 1 meter by 1 meter, we have easy times literally to measure things and see if they are inside the frustum of the camera. So currently we can only see like, let's say 2 units. So I need to go up with the camera. The next definition is literally clear, I guess. Next thing, I want to define the play field. The play field is literally just some cubes first, like some tiles, where I can say, okay, how much or how huge is that tile? I'm gonna reset this one to 0, double click it, so I zoom in and see where it is going to start. If the camera doesn't see it, then we absolutely know that the camera is too high or too much away. I would say this small thing is going to be my camera. So first off, you need to define tiles, pieces on which we can place literally all our towers, as well as tiles where our enemies can move over. And to make this even more beautiful, you can literally go and create, any textures for them. You can give them some borders around if you want and need to. You can make them look grassy. You can give them a checkerboard, and so on and so forth. So, with that said, these numbers here, like the center point of each of them tiles, is later on going to be one of our, let's say, interesting or points of interest. Because later on, depending on how huge, I would say, the y-axis of our scales, in my case now 0.1, we need to lift up the objects which are going to sit on top of the tile. So, and also, we want to make sure that we later on are able to read that tile. So whenever we hover with the mouse over a tile, then we know, hey, we can place something on it, but we need to make sure that we are able to select it first. So select by UI, or do it like with a button placement, something like, okay, if you press the button 1, we're gonna say we are allowed to place something onto this one specific tile our mouse is going to be over. And there are hundreds of possibilities for us to do that. So first things first, let me create 2 materials to point things out. For example, we can give it a white or a dark green and a light green. We can give it a we don't even have to give it a something like a color, but it's working easier. let's assume I don't even know a build or anything right now, like a build in case of what could a theme be, but let's assume this is going to be something like a grayish color, and I'm gonna bring this here on top of my cube. What I can do is I can first off get rid of reflection and specular highlights because they are uninteresting for us. And if I now duplicate this material, I can rename this, hitting F2 on the keyboard for the PC, for the Mac, I don't know. I can, let's say, give it another gray or maybe a black or any other type of color, a difference in which I can define how does that actual piece look. I duplicate that piece now and say Control D for duplicate and drag in the black piece or the black tile. Now the cool part is going to happen, and we can just say we duplicate that as much as we want to create our, let's say, kind of a checker field. Again, this is going to be later on the field, or like each of them rows in which, or lanes maybe, on which the we can place things like our towers or whatever the gun types are going to be as well. We can do this. Now we can constantly copy them. And you need to define how long one, let's say, road or one lane should be. Again, feel free to check out where's the Z-axis always. So you want to move your characters from the right to the left side, and you want to place these things like from the camera view on top of, let's say, these tiles over here, lift it up a bit. So by 0.05, I would say, because our tile height over here is actually 0.1. Now I can define now how many lanes I want to have. If you want to be a bit more specific, or you want to not lose control, what you could do before we actually go one step deeper here, I try to select one of them lanes here, take these and make them part of one lane. I don't know why this has changed now, but I guess I deleted the light as well. Let me undo that and untick the directional light. So this is like one lane. And what I can do is I can create an empty here. I don't know if that is necessary later on, but we can say this is lane 1. And lane 1 needs to be reset, so not locked. We need to reset this one. We go to the 3 dots, let's say reset. So it's starting where all the other things are going to be, like all the other cubes. And I can take all the cubes, also the first one, and make them child of the first lane. The cool thing is, whenever I want to move this lane now, I can do so. And the next cool thing is, we can duplicate the complete lane now. We can rename it here, like again F2, or you go here in the inspector panel and just rename this one. Okay, this is going to be lane 2. But if you want to have a checker field type, not necessarily needed over here, you can take like this cube now, bring that here. This one actually is wrong. What we need to take the complete lane now, like all the cubes from lane, well, it's not 32, but 2. Like that. We take them all and snap them over here. And now we take the last cube, this one, and bring this into the front. So we still have everything in lane 2. We can also see lane 2 now has been changed, like the pivot point of the lane object has changed now. So I bring this one back, take again all the cubes and snap that back. So snapping works with the control key, so keep that in mind. This is something you always need. Now we can duplicate both lanes up and we are good to go. So if we have like a 5-laner game, we're gonna duplicate this once more. So literally taking this last lane and put this at the bottom, for example, we can always do that. Again, absolutely up to you. You need to decide that. You need to define that. You are the game developer. You have to do all the decisions completely on your own. Not me, not anybody else. Okay, cool. So now we have like a 5x8 play field over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you want to have it longer, like you want to have like a 9-laner or a 10-laner, absolutely no issue with that. You can take the first lane, or whichever lane you want. You can control D that last two fields and put them over here. You can do this wherever you want to. You can even make the playfield uneven if you want to, like uneven lengths. You just need to make sure that the end point, the goal point, is going to be, let's say, always clear. Cool. What we also need for our lane is the finishing point. It's like the dead zone. So we can define that with another cube. I'm gonna do only prototype in this particular stage because it is easier for us to set these things correctly up. I'm gonna create another cube here, and the cool thing is all the child objects have been scaled by me now. I can take this one and bring this a bit to the left now, so this can be my dead zone. I can even lift it up so it's literally on a 0 area. Is it important where it is? Well, not exactly. But we want to make sure that when some enemy is hitting this little cube, that we get our game has, our game is over something. So also, this is going to be a dead zone. So you want to rename your parts dead zone. And you can also, by the way, if you want to make a game where two people or even an AI and people are going to protect their bases, like the enemy has the base here and you have the base there, like the player has the base here, you can also do that. So everybody is allowed to play these things and can have moving enemies as an example. So you send an army and they send an army, and whenever or whoever is the stronger army over here, they can battle each other on the lane, and whoever has the more army or the more heaviest army or the stronger army can go further into the lane. So these types of games are literally the same idea behind it, which you can find a bunch, I guess, on in the internet. So in lane 2, which is not lane 2 anymore, I can now take a copy of the dead zone over here, make this child of the lane 2 and just lift it up over here. If I want to make my life easier, I can delete all the other lanes again, because these ones are now my, let's say, good lanes, or the ones I started to work with. And you can also, to build up tutorial levels, rather simple, just start with 2 lanes so people are allowed to play the game or learn the game first, and then you unlock more lanes, let's say, later on. Meanwhile, the people are looking forward or playing the game even longer. Once again, don't forget, this should be something like a 5-minute game or 2-minute games. So this is what casual makes them this casuality or something like that. So that is how they become actually casual. Okay, so what's next? We need something to place on these tiles. You can go with your 3D modeling skills. You are able to build in any gun types. You can model anything you want to. Again, you can make it static. You can make it movable. You can even build in anything, like as I said before, like you send an army, they send an army, 2 armies fight each other in the center. Whoever is stronger is going to win the race and goes forward until they hit the dead end. Or maybe you have an HP bar which represents the base health or something like that, and the more or whoever lost or loses his health first, well, he is good to go and runs out of HP and so on. So again, keep that in mind. It's important to understand that these casual games are just in-between games, like whenever you sit in the bus, okay, let's play a round or 2, maybe I win, maybe I lose, doesn't really matter, but maybe I can go forward in the level itself, or maybe I get some unlockables, maybe I'm able to purchase better towers or weapons or guns or whatever, or characters, or whatever you are using, or even spaceships, if that is going to be like a spaceship game, where you can send an army of or a jet and they can do the same. Or again, you're gonna have some I don't know, different tower types. How do we create a tower? Well, or something to place on these tiles. Well, we can start rather simple by just prototyping them from cubes, spheres, and capsules, maybe some cylinders here and there, maybe even planes are working. When we start with the cube, this could be like the base of something where we put something on top and it's just looking into one direction. It doesn't have to move. It doesn't have to have a specific size. It doesn't have to have anything. I reset that first so we know where we are. We can literally design that, and with design I really mean that. Just small amount. First off, I would scale down this one here as well, maybe 0.1 or 0.2 in the y-axis, so we just have, let's say, something to showcase. We can also say we're gonna put in something like a 0.8 in scale on x and z value over here, so we have like just a little fundament, or some at least something to put on. Now on this cube, if that is going to be the base of the object, doesn't have to be, because we can also use like an empty as we did before. For example, we can say here we create an empty game object, but we don't need the scale and all that stuff. We can keep the scale to be like 1, 1, 1 on this base object, and we just use the graphic elements to be part of it, so it's easier later on for us to place and even to offset if needed. Offset in a manner of where is the pivot point of the actual plane where we want to place the things on. But let's take it as is, and we can now lift it up and bring it anywhere we want, and we can also do the same with the graphics or the graphic 3D elements, let's say. So I can literally lift this up at any time, I can scale it, and I can even put more objects on top of it. For example, I can put, I don't know, a sphere. I can center it, I can scale it, but the base object is not going to be affected. So if I put this like here, we can also put in like a little, what is it called, a cylinder. So 3D object cylinder, it's going to be rather huge, but that's not an issue. Type R should be scaling, or we should be able to scale things down over the center over here. Now we rotate, snap rotate with control again, and we can just give it some kind of a barrel. There's one odd thing about these barrels, or about these cylinders. As you can see, the actual pivot point or the z-axis of this actual pivot point is going to be not the barrel direction. So later on, if that is going to be like your first gun tower or something like that, you want to make sure that you have like a spawn point on the top. So how does it work? We can use names here as well. We can rename this one to be the barrel if we want to. And I would create another empty here. And I'm gonna put this one like in front of the barrel somewhere here, I would say. But I would rotate by 90. Why? Because again, the z-axis or the shoot axis over here is going to be a bit easier to handle if something goes just forward in the forward axis, or we rotate something and it's over the forward axis of an object. In that case, this empty game object. You can rename this to be a spawn point. And the cool part is, if you have one of these gun sets done, you can simply create 2 or 3 or different ones of them. You can tint them, you can give them a color, and so on and so forth. So I can name this, I don't know, gun 1 or tower 1, or you name it. Next one, we can duplicate this, bring this over here, and let's assume, I don't know, this can be a bigger barrel, or we can have multiple barrels, for example, so we can shoot 2 bullets at the same time. I'm gonna make the spawn point part of the barrel. I'm gonna put this a bit to the side over here, duplicate the barrel, and put this back. So I have like a 1-shooter barrel thing and a 2-shooter barrel thing. Pretty good. Again, if you want to tint things over here, just give them any material, up to you totally. And you can give that literally any colors you think, which are going to be, good or not. So now we have something to place on the playfield. Why? Because, well, we can use these things now as being our prefabs to place on these tiles. And shooting is a super simple mechanic we can place on these little, or let's say on these towers. How does that work is going to be a little bit later on. It's just something like we have like a release or a shooting time based on each of the guns. Super simple, and the bullets just have a fly speed like a normal fly speed, as well as a different damage setting based on whatever the turret is going to be about. So with that done, we have now a gun 1, and I renamed this one to be gun 2. Again, you can be, or it can be, any gun you want. What you also want to make sure is that you create a bunch of folders for specific things. First one is going to be a prefabs folder where you can put in all your prefabs. The prefab in this case is going to be like a template. Whenever you do some changes to the template, everything in the scene or anywhere else is going to adapt it. So, or adapt from it. I have a little typo, so we rename that prefabs. And I believe it's going to be prefab with a P or with a B. No, with a B. Okay, so I'm gonna take this gun 1, drag it in here, and I have my first prefab, and then I have gun 2, which is going to be my other prefab. So there are some things I need to consider is the rotation of my gun 1 and gun 2. As you can see, when you are on local and pivot, you can see the rotation based on the axis whenever you are in the move tool. Why is that important? Because these tiles here have a rotation as well. So if you would rotate these tiles, it most of the time might be more useful to have the bottom or the guns themselves or the tower or towers or whatever to be the same rotation as the tile where you want to place that. Okay, and the final thing we now need to do is we need to make sure that we are able to place these guns or whatever guns onto one of them tiles. And there are a bunch of possibilities for that to do so. First things first, we want to make sure that we are literally be able to snap them to this particular tile, but at the same time we need to measure where we are. And when we do, like, let's say a left mouse click, whenever we have beforehand we were selecting things, like we were selecting this tower 1 and tower 2 thing, we can easily use some buttons for that placement, just some placeholders for these. Then we are allowed to put them anywhere in the game field, as long as it is some kind of this particular tiles on which we are allowed to put that. And how do we do this is, again, literally rather simple. We just need to make sure that when the mouse is over a tile and we click the left mouse key and we have some, let's say, gun type selected, we just say, okay, instantiate the prefab onto the tile whichever our mouse is currently over. So how do we do this? First off, each of them tiles need to know that they are a type of a tile. These tiles or these squares need to know, hey, I'm a dead zone. So whenever something is hitting me, like an enemy is hitting me, the game or the round is literally over. To start with, first we always create a new folder for our scripts, since that is going to be something needed for specific things. I create a new C# script and call this one tile, because this is just our input type on which we want to have the input possibilities. We can also place or create something like an input manager, which is measuring if our mouse is currently over a tile. And all of that depends always on the game you are going to create, and if there is a possibility to place a second one onto this tile, which in that case the tile needs to be, let's say, blocked by a boolean, for example. Let's start with the tile, define that, and so you get an idea of what is a tile in my opinion, and what could it be for you, and what could it be for anything else. Like, what is it? What does it represent? This one object, this one tile, no matter how it looks, but what is going to be on top of the tile? So what is the actual code for this particular tile thing? So first off, I want to open the script. I need to tell my firewall everything is good here. And we are always starting with the tile over here. By the way, if you work with Visual Studio or MonoDevelop or whichever IDE, make sure that this naming here is going to be blue. So Intelli, I believe it is called Intelli something, or autocomplete or something like that. Make sure it works. Like always, whenever you do type things in, that you get autocompletion, or like you get, if I start to type something like TR, that it tells me, hey, you have all these possibilities to put things in. I believe it's IntelliSense or something like that called. Just Google it up. If it doesn't work for you, if you type TR in here and you don't see transform component, then make sure it works for you. So most of the time, this here needs to be not white, but any other tint. Usually it's like this blue color over here. Just so don't forget it. Our update loop over here is literally not important, since a tile does not have to do something like 60 times or 60 times a second literally, so we don't need this. Also, most of the time we don't need start for a tile, because the tile in this case represents just a, let's say, positioning for where is the tile, and this comes from the object the tile script is going to sit on, but also what is on top of me, or is there something on top of me? And for this is there something on top of me, we're gonna have we can do a public or private boolean. Usually we don't need public over here, we just need to set that one later on by, okay, when I do this, tell the tile, not just place whatever we want to place on that, but also tell it, hey, you have a visitor, you have something on top of you. Doesn't matter what it is. In this case, it's going to be one of our guns. So this bool is just something like, is the tile taken or not? You can also name this one is taken, so, or tile taken, or whatever. It's just for us to protect things. A boolean always returns true or false. Is it true? Is it false? And we can of course set it or get it. Or like we can get the information or we can set the information. That's totally up to us, however we want to handle that. Now, when I am with my mouse over a tile, I want to have, because it's the easiest for the moment, it is a function called onMouseOver. It is literally a Unity provided. onMouseOver, like my mouse is over this specific object. I want to tell myself, hey, let me know who that is, or what is under my mouse, for example. We can return in the debug lines always something like debug.log, and then we can say this.name. Just tell me the name of the object our mouse is over. And that's what we want to test first. We want to understand now that when we are with the mouse over a tile, that we understand that the engine takes, notice that takes a note of that. Let me bring down my camera, because in the game view it's so small, it's like too high. Let me start with 10, or maybe, I don't know, 8. I can go down and up here with these numbers, maybe something like that. So we are actually where our game field is going to be. We don't care about anything, we can just eyeball that. If you want to, you can always freely rotate that a bit, so you have more like a depth of field scenario. For rotation or for positioning, I'm gonna do, I don't know, something like that. So we get the 3D feeling over here. Again, it is totally up to you how you're gonna do this. For me, I would just want to know now if one of them tiles, I can select them and give them the tile here, the tile script, just drag it onto the actual inspector window. I'm gonna take all the other cubes here and give them a tile. Gonna do the same here. With shift you can select the first, hold shift, select the last in the list, and now give that the actual tile script. Make sure you don't have this one like too often on top of it, so just once, so you don't get too much feedback. If we now press play and hover over with the mouse over one tile, we should get in return a name. In this case, you can see it is cube 12. If we select it or double click it, we should see who it's going to be and which script is going to be responsible for that. We can also do this like over onto any other one. I'm gonna collapse the info so we get a bit more info. Like I select the game window and gonna check this cube. As you can see, it's called cube 14. This one is called cube 12, and so on and so forth. So our mouse gets recognized by just using one simple function, which is called on mouse over. What is needed for that? Just a collider. The collider just gets a raycast, which is going to be driven by the on mouse over. The raycast touches the object and we notice about it. If that is the case, we can now place whenever we do a mouse click, like whenever we on mouse over, we are on one tile, we can instantiate an object if it is selected. For that, we just need to have a selection option, let's say, in which we are able to select an object from a UI. We can also maybe put a cancel button, so we don't want to place that anymore. And we can even place some kind of a ghost object over the tile where it would be, so we don't, so we can see where we would place this one. But that is as simple as the other content here as well. So as you can see, just 2 lines of code give us the possibility to check where we are, which tile we have selected to place our tower onto it. And once we do that, we just say is taken is equal to true, and so we cannot place anything else on top of it. How would we place something on top of it is rather simple. So instead of using an update loop, we can also use the on mouse over. And now we can check for inputs. So if input.get mouse button down, and then we just define which mouse button we are actually pressing down. So get mouse button down. We want to first say it's mouse 0, so the left mouse button over here. And then we can do something. And we can place our gun or our tower on top of that. I'm gonna put the debug line now into this get mouse button down function, because I want to measure if I only get the actual console line whenever I do a click, which is super easy, as you can tell in a moment. So I want to click here and I want to get the idea or the actual input from that. As you can see, it returns cube 8, cube 12, or whatever the names about these cubes are going to be. As you can see, the input of the mouse in such particular case is going to be super simple. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and meanwhile you're watching currently, as well as don't forget to ask any questions in the chat or even down below in the comment section if you have even further questions or something like that. And don't forget you can hire me whenever needed for your game project if you need any help at all. So just check the description of the video or the current live stream down below. If I now click over here, I want to check if the tile has been taken already. So we want to make sure if it has not been taken. So we need to make an exclamation mark in front of it, so it's seen like is taken. Literally, that's what it says. So this is a negative sign, literally, for the boolean. If that is not taken, then we can place our object on top of it. Which object are we actually able to place? Well, we don't have anything which is measuring that and is doing that functionality. For that, you can create something like a UI manager or input manager, or even a, let's say, game manager, which is handling what are we able to place and what is the one we have selected. And if we, let's say, selected the second time, we deselect our selection. So let's create a new C# script and call this one Game Manager. Once renamed correct with a big G and a big M, probably also with small letters happening, we're gonna see this little G symbol. This is going to represent that, well, most of the time all the game management content is going to be inside the script, so we just simply can see that one thing. So what does the game manager know about? Well, it should know about the possibility for us or which are the towers we can build, select, place, and then whenever we want to do that, we just tell the game manager, hey, make sure to place this one tower which we have selected on top of the tile where we currently are on with the mouse. Actually, like the input from the tile is going to be we're gonna request that from the game manager. How does that work? Well, first off, we need to know who is the one we can place and where is its position. The position not in a world, but the position in a list or in a, let's say, in an array or a dictionary if needed. Not that I would know of, but say, yeah, something like that. So let's create a game object array. You can also use a list. I like lists because they are rather dynamic, but since we don't need to change this array or this list of objects, they are usually not changed, except you are going to have some input at the very beginning of a round, for example, in which you can define which of the objects or the unlocked characters or something like that you want to use in the game. Then you need a list. Otherwise, you can use an array. At the same time, if you don't want to rewrite everything, you can start directly with a list. So again, a list is a dynamic array, nothing else but that. And we can define the type, can be a game object, and we can say it's going to be our tower prefab list. Tower prefab list. You don't have to use the list keyword at the very end, but it's easier later on to identify. What we also want to do is we want to instantly go and initialize that being a new list of type game object. So now we can put in all our prefabs into it, can pick from it if needed, depending on, let's say, an ID, by a button press. For example, we create now a public, what is it called? Void. It's not a return type function, a void function. So it doesn't return anything, it's just doing whatever is inside. And let's say we name this one select, tower. Select tower. And we're going to pass in an integer ID. The ID is going to be literally the actual prefab ID over here, the element in the list. So 0 would be the first element, 1 would be the second, and so on. And this is going to be called from a UI, for example, so we can do something like select this one game object. To hold this one game object, we can say we create another. It doesn't have to be public, but it's easier to, let's say, debug. Another game object, which is going to be our selected game object. Game selected GO or game object. The selected game object is the one we're going to pass in from the list into the game object by the selection from our what is it called? Well, button, for example. So a UI button. If we press 1, then we're gonna select, or we press a number 0 over here. We're gonna pass an ID 0. We're gonna select the one which is sitting on element 0. If it is 1, well then 1. You can go deeper and deeper and can define these guns at any kind or however you like to at any time you want to. So if we want to select a tower, then we set our selected game object to be equal to our tower prefab list in square brackets, whatever the incoming ID is. So we can define super simply which is the selected game object. If we have a selected game object already, we probably want to deselect it. So we can literally do this at the same time. So a second button press, we can say we empty out that functionality. So what we can do is we can say if selected game object is equal to null, so there's none inside, then we want to go and select one, whichever the one is we're gonna do select. We can also say or if it doesn't have the same selection literally, so we can swap that. Like if the current selected one is not the same as the one we have selected, like based on the button input. But again, this is something you can implement at any time. It's just another AND operator, and then check the IDs of them objects. Like if this object is the same, if this, like the selected of this ID. Otherwise, we just want to nullify that input. So we can say selected object is equal to be null. So we empty out the space. So if that is equal to null, then we select it. If it is not equal to null, then we make it to be null. So we always have some, let's say, good inputs over here. So when we have something selected, we can check against this. If we want to make it so that this one is going to be a static selected object, we can do so. We should be. Let's take a look into it. So we can say now, from static objects, we can read from the game manager, for example. We can take the information of this object. We can make it static. We should be able to, and we can read it from here, from our is taken thing, and then we can instantiate that. So what we can do is, whenever we have a selected object, so if game manager dot selected object is not equal to null, so we have something selected beforehand, only then we are able to instantiate this one on top of the current tile we are on. So we instantiate something. What do we instantiate is going to be the actual game manager dot a selected game object. This is the one we want to instantiate, and now we want to parent that. We don't have to parent it, but we can. But at the same time, we can just say, okay, where do we want to place that? So like where is the position? Where do we want to position that thing? So in that case, we can say the position is going to be the same as the tile position. So we can say, where do we want to put this? So we can say transform.position, and we can also rotate it, for example, to be quaternion.identity. Or if we don't want to use quaternion.identity, we should be able to use the transform.rotation of the tile. So whenever we don't define any other object or any other game object in this case, but we only say transform, then we always mean the transform of the tile's game object or the script's game object. Same for the rotation over X, Y, and Z. Now we just need to have some UI which tells us to do so. Oh, and there's one more thing. If like we are done with instantiating, we want to empty out a selected game object here as well. I don't know if we are able to do this, let's say, directly, but what we can do is we can create a little helper for that, which is going to be a public static. It needs to be static, otherwise we are unable to talk to selected game objects. So we can say deselect game object, or prefab, or tower, or whatever object, open close parentheses. Which one does matter? I mean, it does matter. Oh, and the return type should be actual void. It actually doesn't return anything. So in that case, whenever we call this function, we just say selected game object is equal to null. So we empty out that because we have placed one tower. And if we have like a currency, we can also check again so we have enough money or currency, whatever, and so on and so forth. So now we can say game manager dot deselect our game object, and we are good to go. So we just literally, we don't really deselect it. It's more like we don't have any selected tower once we have placed one thing. So we have to change or choose another tower the next time we want to place that. With that said, we now should be able to place things. But we don't have any UI. I'm gonna screw or put some super quick UI together. Just 2 buttons, nothing fancy. So we go to UI, canvas, just create any canvas you like to. You don't have to give it a name, but you can if you want to, but we need to make sure that we scale with the screen size. Your reference resolution, again, is totally up to you. And we need to make sure that we have the event system, otherwise the buttons do not react. Now we're gonna create 2 buttons. I don't give it a name, at least maybe, I don't know, but we can maybe give it a text. So we can name it gun1. And anyhow, it doesn't let me. Gonna do another one in a second. I zoom out and go into 2D mode and zoom out until I can see everything and can reposition that, rescale that, whatsoever, and put it anywhere. So this is your UI content you later on need to take care of, all totally up to you or on your own. And with this button, we want to build a gun too. So how does that work now? We just need to connect these 2 buttons with the game manager function where we select the prefabs we want to go and select. Before we can do that, we need an object which is going to hold our game manager content. I'm gonna name this game manager here as well, so it's easier to find if needed. And we're gonna put the game manager script on top of it, and we can open this list. From our prefabs, we're gonna bring in our actual gun 1 and gun 2. So we now have these two objects, these prefabs, into the list, so we can place them directly on the playfield. Super simple. We just need to remember the first gun is element 0, the second one is element 1. In the canvas, directly on our buttons, we need to define the on-click events. So we go down here, on-click, say plus, and we drag in the game manager object. Now we define the function. The function is called select tower. So on the first button for gun 1, we want to have an ID of 0. For the second, we want to have an ID of 1. In the game manager, we should see when we wouldn't have a static object, we would see if it is if we can see that like who is going to be selected one. As you can see, even in the debug mode, we cannot see static variables here in the inspector. So probably there's a workaround for that, but we don't really need that, at least for the moment. So let's test this system out, because that's everything we needed to know. I'm gonna go into debug mode again, or out of debug mode, and let's press play. We could also debug that with debug line, so we know what's going on over here. But let's assume we select gun 1 and I press on this tile. What you now can tell is I have created a gun. I mean, directly on the playfield. It is here, and it is sitting directly on the tile on which I placed it. And now I cannot click on any other thing. I get still the information about which cube has been clicked. But I should not be able to place a gun 2 on top of that, but we can put it, let's say, behind it. So I can use gun 2 here, a gun 1 there, a gun 1 here. So each of them, everybody who knows about a tile, on these things we can place all our gun types when we have them to be selectable in our guns over here. And the rest is rather simple now. The rest is like, okay, how much damage is doing a gun, is shooting into one or the other direction, as well as having a spawn where enemies are going to come. So whenever we do the shooting, the enemies, get hit by that. I'm gonna do a 1-minute break. I leave the screen on, but give me 1 minute to drink something. Okay, welcome back. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, by the way, if you haven't already. And if you like the live stream, don't forget to thumb up this actual live stream. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below or use the chat and let me know what you think about it. And maybe you have some questions, feel free to ask at any time you want until the stream is running. Okay, so we are now able to place all these guns. So what we can now do is we can make them shoot. So there are hundreds of possibilities. For example, if the gun sees something by raycast, then it starts to do this shooting. Also, at the same time, we can do something like, okay, we can put a collider on top of or in front of the gun, and whenever somebody is inside it, which is maybe tagged, well, then we can do the shooting already as well. How does the shooting work? Is rather simple. Again, it's just a point into this direction, shoot, meanwhile doing so, and so on. By defining the gun, we can also give it like multiple spawn points. Depending on that, we can loop through all the spawn points and shoot at the same time. Or let's say we shoot like left, right, left, right, left, right, and so on. There are a bunch of things we can integrate here as well. Gonna create a new C# script and call this one gun, because later on you're gonna have probably multiple gun types. You may not directly go use that. Maybe you wanna later on go with scriptable objects, so you have more, let's say, possibilities, or maybe a bit more beautiful setups to make. Guns need some projectiles, so we need to create a projectile which is flying forward until, well, like whenever. Like it flies only 3 seconds, has a short duration, long duration, whatever. We can define that later on as well. So what does a gun do? Whenever a gun sees an enemy, it should instantiate a bullet. And also a gun maybe has some damage, so it can put the damage over to the bullet and tell later on contact to the enemy, hey, I have this amount of damage, you're gonna have to lose this amount of damage. I was doing a bunch of damage videos already, so check them out if you like to. So what do we need to do with the gun right now? Well, we need to define what the gun is about. Again, later on you can always go into scriptable objects and use them, because they're probably easier to set up and maybe easier to manipulate. The things they are doing are literally the same. So we can say the damage of the gun is going to be a type of maybe integer or float, totally up to you. You can name it whatever you want to. So we can put this directly onto the bullet once instantiated. Same thing for, well, maybe a bullet speed, not really necessary for the gun to know that. I don't really know, but you can define that if you want to. What else? Well, whenever somebody is going to go into our collider, then we want to do a shoot. And we only want to do that, once again, if somebody is triggering that. For shooting, do yourself a favor, do not use the update loop. I mean, you can, but it's not cool actually. What we need for that is something like a shoot delay. So after when is the delay over, usually I'm gonna use a float. So the shoot delay between the first shot and the next shot should be set by a float. What we're gonna use is a coroutine. So in that case, we're gonna make use of this start function. So whenever we put this gun on a tile, we're gonna start the coroutine to run constantly, but it's like not like the update loop. It's just waiting for getting an input, like a something like a bool, which is something like can shoot maybe. So bool can shoot. The can shoot only gets triggered when there's somebody on the lane to be shot at. What is a coroutine? A coroutine is a time-based function, I would say, in which we can put in wait time. We can do while loops inside. We can literally do anything as we do in an update loop, but it's when it doesn't have any input, it's just idles. It's just literally like update, but it's not as ugly as the update loop and not as cost intense, I would say. So this is our shooting behavior. So we're gonna name this one shoot. We want to run this constantly. So we're going to put in a while loop, which contains just a true keyword. Literally until this gun exists, this coroutine exists and continuously runs. So, and once we're going to have something like if the bool can shoot is going to be equal to true, we don't need to pass that over. We can just say if can shoot. If that is the case, which we're gonna trigger later on by some other functionality, we can do multiple things over here, raycasting, we can do use on trigger enter and so on. If we can shoot, we want to instantiate a bullet, and then we want to do a shoot delay over here. So we start the shoot delay. Before we, whenever we have shot, we want to put the shoot delay, like we want to constantly run up the shoot delay, and whenever the shoot delay is over, we're gonna go back. So if we can shoot, we want to say our shoot delay gets added, or actually we need to have another float for that. I just name it delay. So we're gonna take our delay function and add time.delta time to it. Time.delta time. If that doesn't work, I don't know why is that the case. Okay, we have to define it is equal to something. So we set it to be 0 at the very first place. We added to it if now. Meanwhile, we can have the possibility to shoot, and probably we wanna set the delay to be 0. Well, we're gonna do this later on in another term. Like we're gonna be able to loop through that, and we can say, okay, we add delay to it, and if the actual delay is bigger or equal our actual shoot delay, so the one we can set by hand or wherever, if that is the case, then we want to instantiate a bullet. So we can say instantiate, and currently I don't have a bullet, but we can prepare that. So we can say public game object, let's say bullet prefab, like this. So we just want to instantiate a bullet prefab, like so. Of course, we don't know where. So what we want to make sure is that we rotate that one into the direction of the transform of our spawn point. And if we have multiple spawn points, well, then we want to define that as well. So since they are not changeable, like but per gun, but not in runtime, we can use this time a transform array. So instead of a list, which is going to be dynamic, we don't have to do this dynamic change. We just have a static, like it never changes. Like if you have 1 spawn point or 2 spawn points for bullet, well, then it is what it is. If you have like 10, well, then it is what it is. Then they don't change because the gun is the gun. It's going to be our, what is it called? Our shoot spawn or spawn points or bullet spawns. Bullet spawn. Spawns or spawn points. At each of them bullet spawn points, we want to instantiate that. So that means we can put this into a for or for each loop. I guess a for each loop should be pretty much okay here, since we don't change the collection. So for each something inside our bullet spawns, the variable here is going to be transform type. So for each transform item, we want to instantiate a bullet. And where do we want to put this? So we can say this is going to be our spawn point, SP, whatever. Where do we want to instantiate is actually at sp.transform. And since this is transform type already, we can directly go with position and sp.rotation. So we want to actually say sp.rotation. Since we want to shoot the bullet in the forward direction, we were talking about that with the actual Z area or Z axis. That's what we want to do. And then we tell the bullet, whenever instantiated, we give it the actual damage parameter, which we have set by beforehand, and then the bullet can fly into the direction. Before we continue with the shooting, we need to make sure that we start the coroutine first. So start coroutine, now we can define how we want to start that. It depends on how we want to use that later on, and if we want to be able to stop it at any time. So again, we have a constantly running for loop. In going in, resets the float or sets the float to be in a delay of 0, so no delay at the moment. Once we can shoot, we add up to delay until we figure out that delay is bigger or equal the shoot delay we have set before, like every once a second, for example. We want to go through all bullet spawns. If there's only 1 spawn point, pretty good, we are good to go. Otherwise, if we have 2, then like for the second gun, then we're gonna shoot 2 at the same time. So we instantiate 2 times per bullet spawn point, 1 bullet literally. What we want to do is, once we are done with instantiating them, like after here, we want to reset the delay to be equal to 0. So we are done over there, reset, and we can constantly go into the second thing. Also, we may or may not, if we are not able to shoot, like we want to maybe set the delay back to be 0 as well. So we can probably do something like if there's no delay or there's nothing possible over here, But probably this is not a good idea, because constantly we would reset this incoming delay over here. So we may or may not go and change this one later on. But keep that in mind, something in a coroutine still runs quite often. We can also give some delay here as well, so again, totally up to us. That's cool. If you don't want to use delay in this case, you can always go and use wait for seconds. So we can yield for a specific amount of time. Currently, I wonder why I don't have to yield anything, but probably we're gonna get an argument about it. So we literally have no yield return statement or yield return null, which is funny currently. So usually we should see something like, hey, you have to yield before you do like constantly. Like if we are not doing anything or we are unable to do anything, then we need to do something like yield return null, like, because the while loop still constantly runs over here. We don't even, I guess we don't even need to have this else statement over there, but yeah, again, we may or may not encounter the yield problematic over here. So now we need a bullet which is not, not too big and not too small, and can shoot and can live for a super small amount of time. I create a new 3D object sphere. I'm gonna name this one bullet. And I'm gonna bring this over here and to see what the size is going to be, and I'm gonna rotate that by 90, even if I don't have to. And I want to make sure that the z-axis is going to look into this direction. Now I take the R key and make my bullet a bit smaller. Again, literally it doesn't matter where we place that things. This bullet is going to be a bit bigger, but that's okay. Again, positioning doesn't really matter, same for scale. We just want to move it forward like so. And once it hits something, we want to destroy it, or whenever travel time is gone, then we want to destroy that as well. So when that is the case, we gonna need a script for the bullet here as well, because we want it to constantly travel into one direction. In that case, we create a new C# script, call this one bullet. Wait until the compiler is done running, select the bullet afterwards, and put the bullet script on it. And the last thing is we want to make sure that it has a sphere collider, which currently is here, and we want to set the is trigger to be true, like on. And now we can go into the prefabs folder and take the bullet and make a prefab out of it. We can double click to play around with prefabs, and if we want to tint this into any color, I don't know, into a red color or any other color, I'm gonna make it red. Maybe you can make it green, blue, whatever, and even any grassy thing. And we can tint it. And whenever we go out of this prefab, we want to make sure that autosave is going to be on. If we're gonna go out of it, you can see this prefab now is red as well. So this bullet is red, as well as the prefab should be red here in the preview as well, as you can see. So it's not, updated here, but that's okay. Nothing fancy with that. Now we want to, work on the script, which is sitting now on the bullet. The only thing the bullet should do is drive forward, and if you hit something, well, do damage. So we say we open this, and how do we do this? First, we don't need to start. Well, we shouldn't. But the bullet does have an int for the damage. We're gonna set the damage whenever we activate the bullet or whenever we instantiate the bullet. And then update, we wanna drive or translate the direction forward. So we can say something like transform the position. I don't know if that is really the correct one. Transform position plus equal transform dot forward. I don't know. Vector 3 dot forward. Or maybe is equal to forward times speed times, I know we don't have speed yet, times time dot delta time. Otherwise, if that doesn't work, we can also make use something like I don't know, something like transform.translate. So we translate it over time. And public speed, which is going to be a float type. So we can set it to anything. We can start with, I don't know, 3 or 5 or 10. We need to check that anyways. So this is the only thing we do in the update loop. And there's one more thing we want to know is a void start. We need the start function actually, because it's easier for us to use that. We can say we want to destroy the bullet at start. Sounds pretty funny, but first off we need to say what do we want to actually destroy this actual game object, so this game object, but we can put in a delay, like after, let's say, 3 seconds, 3f, we want to destroy the bullet no matter what, which is okay for this. We don't need the keywords this, so we can also type in directly game object, up to you. And what we want to do is whenever we hit something, so void on trigger enter, since we have a trigger over here, we need to make sure on trigger enter is typed out correctly. On trigger enter, and on trigger enter needs a collision or a collider, actually a collider. So whoever, I don't know, COL or other or whoever. So whoever we are colliding with, we can check for it if it is an enemy. If it is an enemy, then we do damage. Otherwise, it's, we don't care. So we can say something like if COL.compare tag. So we can compare a tag if we want to. And we can compare with an enemy tag or whatever the tag is going to be. You decide that as well. If that is the case, we want to talk or get the information about the enemy, which we don't have at the moment, and then we want to do damage, so we can do something like do damage. Here, don't forget to save. There's one more thing we need to know is whenever we create this bullet, we want to know how high is the damage. So we want to talk from somewhere to this. In that case, we create a public. Well, we might be able to put it as a static, but then the damage needs to be static as well. So something like public static set bullet damage. We want to set the bullet damage by damage. It needs to be of type void. And then we can pass in any integer for the amount. We may not get it this way. Because now when I say damage, you can see damage is not accessible because this is a static variable here as well. So we can do something like static int damage. Then we might be able to. So damage is equal to amount. And so we set it whenever we create the bullet. But before we do so, the gun needs to know about it. So in that case, we first off need to store the information about the bullet. So actually we create a new game object over here. We say new bullet and is equal to instantiate. So it deleted my instantiate. But now we can talk to new bullet. So we can say new bullet dot get component of type bullet. And in here is the function we just created, something like set the actual damage to the bullet, and like this one, set bullet damage. But as you can see, it's not accessible for us because it tells, I don't know, it tells me that we cannot do this. Set the actual bullet damage. It could be that we are not allowed to do this because of the static parameter. Let's see, I just copy it over and now we're gonna pass in the actual damage from here like so, and probably it's not working. Probably because it's not a public parameter. I don't know. So instead of using a static parameter, we can just use just a normal, so without using static because we have the connection here anyways. What did I do? Oh, I just deleted the actual parenthesis. Okay, so we're gonna do it without static, works as well, so no issue with this. So we don't have any issues with that because we get the component here anyway, so we can directly talk to the script component and don't have any issue. So we set the bullet damage so we know whatever the amount is going to be. It's here, it is still public, private in this case, so we just use this one little function to help out with that. Again, then we can compare and can see what's going on. How do we trigger that right now is rather simple as well. We just need to set the can shoot if there is somebody in the trigger zone of the gun. So in this case, we're gonna use the on trigger enter here as well. On trigger enter. So if some enemy is going to trigger, we're gonna use the collider. Other or COL here as well. And we check for enemies again. So if col.compare tag, we don't have enemies yet. If we compare for a tag with a big enemy, like or whatever enemy, then we want to do something. In that case, we want to do something like, hey, can shoot is true. So our coroutine is going to run. So can shoot is equal to true. If we're gonna have something like on trigger exit, because it exits because it's getting destroyed, on trigger exit, I believe it's called on trigger exit. So we still check out if that is so, and we don't have anybody into here. We may or may not, I mean, maybe we're gonna do even further. Instead of using on trigger enter, maybe we're gonna use on trigger stay. Which is going to like constantly, like meanwhile somebody stays inside the collider, we have a true. Otherwise, if somebody exits that, we want to set it to be false. Not quite sure if that is a good something, but this is something you should always take a look into. So we have on trigger enter, on trigger stay, and on trigger exit. You can always read about them inside the Unity scripting reference. So feel free to always check out what are the possibilities for you to use. Once again, make sure you don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to thumb up the video or the live stream or whenever you watch that. So we're gonna get an idea about it. I'm gonna make a small break here and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, let's continue. Our bullet should be shooting. We should be able to translate, or shoot that forward in the forward axis of the bullet by the speed and the delta time. We'll see that. I don't know how slow or how fast this is going to be. You need to check that out. And we want to make sure that we destroy the game object as well as do damage to enemies if they are available. So let's take a look into the console. If there are any issues, maybe some typos, feel free to check them out anytime and see if you're good to go. And these actually here, they don't have any collider objects yet. What we can do is we could use any type of collider on this specific gun if our gun script is on it. So if we do it like this, we're gonna be able to put any kind of element on top of these objects as well. What does that mean? Well, if the longest, let's say, if the longest range where or detection range is based on you know, but up until here, for example, then we can put it in. It doesn't matter about the length. We just want to define maybe this gun can only shoot if it, if enemies, are in closer range. Whatever, you can decide that. But what we can do is we can add another component here called the box collider. The box collider, but not a 2D. 2D is bad. Remove. We need a box collider 3D literally. So you can see, okay, it's kind of it has the same scale of our game object, so we can define it. And what we can do with this one specific thing is we can manipulate them in length. For example, I can use this little helper here, and I can drag this as long as I want to. For example, up until this point, which is going to represent literally the complete playfield length. Can do the same with the other one. Holding down Control again snaps the complete size of it. So whenever somebody is inside this collider, it's going to be notified. If it is tagged as an enemy, it's going to be notified and should be able to shoot. So how do we do this? Well, first we need an object which is represent our enemy. I make another object which is probably another sphere, and you can treat that however you like to. But what we can do is, meanwhile in runtime, we can check that out. So I'm gonna put this maybe here and make this a bit further up. I want to define the two guns first because they need a prefab here. So we can go into the assets and say we both give them bullet. The shoot delay might be 3. And now we have the bullet spawn points. So each of them has a different bullet spawn point. This one has a spawn point just number 1, so we put it in here. And this one has 2 spawn points, which are here and here. So I'm gonna use them here as well. So 1 and 2. So both spawn points should be treated, or should be treated separately by each other. And now we tag this one sphere to be our enemy. So we go to tag, untagged, add new tag, go here into the list and add in our enemy tag. Enter, and now we go again to the sphere and set the tag on the sphere to be an enemy. Let's see what's happening if these two guns, they should have the script running. They don't do any damage or something, but they should shoot in the delay of whatever. I don't know what the delay is. We'll see in a moment. Maybe I have to put in any delay. But let's wait until Unity is busy with whatever it is doing over here. I pretty quickly go and I believe I restart Unity because something might be fishy over here. So I pretty quickly restart it. Maybe there's a coding issue with that, so we don't really need, I don't really know that. So maybe sometimes refreshing or restarting could end up showing us the actual issues about, once again, it could be that the while loop doesn't really work as it should. It could also be, oh, I didn't save the scene actually, which is bad. We literally have to set up our complete scene again because I haven't saved. Too bad. Even the sample scene is completely empty. But shouldn't be an issue because most of the stuff has been saved by me beforehand. I first off load my layout again, so I don't have any issues with that. And I pretty quickly set things up again. Nothing fancy. We don't have this dead zone or anything. And I do, yeah, pretty quickly put this stuff together again. So I need a cube, It's literally just my tile. I'll reset it. I try my best to scale that up pretty quick. I don't really know what happened over here, and we'll see. So materials and code and stuff like that, and so on and so forth, they should be good to go. The only thing is the color hasn't saved here for the bullets, but that's fine here as well. So I duplicate the cube pretty quick, make a second one, and make this one black. I don't know. I really don't know what happened here. But again, it shouldn't take us or me too long, since again the code has been set already. Maybe it's too hot here. Whatever. So create another empty. It's going to be my lane 1 again, and I reset it. I make all my cubes again now part of lane, and now I can duplicate the line. Again, it doesn't really matter, at least not for the moment. It's totally okay. So I'm gonna take them. So always save often before you start to play around with things. Something is a bit picky here today, so it's a bit laggy. Maybe there's something fishy in the background running. I don't know, but that's okay. This is something where we always learn from. Gonna be lane 2 here. And if my system is going to crash, then I'm gonna continue later on. No worries about it. Okay, so again, I have a gun 1. I'm gonna place that here. I have a gun 2. I place that there. It doesn't matter where they are, how they are, what they are. I didn't save the actual components on the guns, so I need to make sure that I again set the guns up pretty quick over here with the actual bullet prefab, with a shoot delay of, let's say, 3 seconds. Damage doesn't matter. We can put in a 1 for the moment. And I need to set the actual spawns up. So first one has the spawn point here. Second one has the 2 spawn points here. So spawn point 1 and spawn point 2. I don't know if they are now correct. Let's test them out. This is 1, this is 2. Pretty good. Now when you do that, go to overrides here and apply the changes to the prefab, and do the same here. Otherwise they don't save up, and they don't save the connection to the bullet prefab as an example. And of course, if you have done something in the actual scene, don't forget to hit Ctrl S for quick save over here. My camera is also ruined, so I need to, well, not necessarily, but I'm gonna go and rotate it a bit down and bring this a bit up, so we have something to take a look at. And the final thing is I want to put my little enemy sphere again in here, as well as I need to set up the guns with the actual box collider as we did before. Activate this one, make sure it's trigger here, and I'm gonna drag this one up to the maximum length, and this one here as well. Probably you want to later on automate that at any time. I don't know. Just something to take note. I save again, as well as I update the prefabs again by using the override for gun 1 and gun 2. So the box collider stays in the prefab as well. So whatever happens cannot happen again, hopefully. Cool. So now I take another UI or another 3D object over here, like a sphere, which is going to hopefully represent one of my enemies. If this with the while loops doesn't work, why ever, which could happen, or could be, then I just use a different scenario over there, or use a yield statement instead, and just wait the amount of seconds before we can do another shoot. That's working as well, or should work as well. I just don't know where there's no issue or error with that thing. Okay, I add the tag again, which is going to be my enemy tag, enemy, enter. I'm gonna tag this sphere with the enemy tag and hit save, Ctrl S for quick save, and try again. And let's see if it crashes, kind of crashes again, or if it stays there in the, oh please hold on thing. it could happen at any time, and I'm not quite sure why and how that is going to why that is going to happen. So you can always check into code, and probably we gonna see something which is not going to going to look correctly as we want this to be. Maybe it's the for loop, the while loop with inside the coroutine or something like that. Sometimes, or usually, you get some weird error going on in the console, and this can happen at any time. I mean, it's sometimes you just don't know why things are not going to happen. So the worst case scenario is you have to go and build up again or see where the issues are. I believe it has something to do with the actual while loop or with the coroutine at all. So even the task manager say, hey, nope, I don't want that to be run. So I try again. Gonna start the project again, and I gonna change the code a bit so I don't get this weird issues over there. I mean, that's what I think is going to happen. That there's like no return type, or actually there's no yield statement like yield return null or yield wait for something and so on and so forth. Which most of the time is the one which is doing the trouble. But on the other hand, I wonder why it doesn't whine about it or cry about it. I will be back in a moment once Unity has been hopefully loaded. Oh, looks okay. Again, gonna use my layout. But this time I have the scene. I can constantly or can go instantly back into it. So that's why saving is absolutely important over here. So let's go to scripts and go to gun and see why the actual coroutine doesn't do whatever it should do. And probably I comment out a bunch of things first. So this while loop over here could be, I mean, that is the could be thing. Could be the issue. It could be just that else statement over here, which I assume could be the case. And at the very end, we can just say, at least for the moment for testing, yield return. Well, what do we want to return? Actually, we want to return null. So we don't return anything. We can save here and try again. So meanwhile, we are not doing anything. We just return null. So we are like in an infinite loop. Don't forget to save anything and try again. Maybe that is the case, but it's hard to tell. So as we can now see, I'm currently running this. So I believe the while loop just needed to have a yield statement. So if I go and take this now down, there should happen something at least. We should, or the objects here, the guns, they should notify that something is going on. So they should be able to trigger or to see when something is triggering it. And now the fun part is it has to have a rigid body. So who has to have a rigid body is up to you. You can use the enemy to have the rigid body, but you can also use the guns to have the rigid body. So in that case, if something needs to trigger a reaction, you can use rigid bodies. We do not want to use gravity at all, and usually a kinematic should be okay over here. But let's take just a rigid body for the sphere, and let's see if it now understands, hey, there's somebody going on. We do get pushed away because we don't have a trigger set in the sphere here as well. And now when we drag this one down, we should actually see some reaction, but we don't. So in that case, we now can see or can tell, maybe give the actual on-trigger stay functionality. We can say, okay, if there is some actual enemy, let's debug that. So debug.log. Something like enemy in sight. This is what you need to learn always, is how to debug code when something isn't happening or even not happening. You need to learn, okay, is there something or not? As you can tell now, the enemy is inside, so it knows, hey, there is something, we should be able to shoot it. But one part is we need to wait 3 seconds before we're gonna see a shoot. And now, as we can tell, we got 3 bullet clones, 1, 2, 3, but they don't move, as you can see over here. So why do they don't move? Probably they are too slow. Or I don't know, maybe maybe they are too slow. Let's give them a speed of 20. I do the change directly inside the prefab, so they hopefully move faster. So we need to stay 3 seconds at the moment with the sphere. Enemy is inside. We need to wait. We need to see where those bullet clones are going to be, and they seem to be kinda stuck over there. Do they move? They try to. So they try to move, but they can't. So in that case, probably instead of using transform positions equal to that, we're gonna say plus equal forward times speed times time to delta time. So we add to the current position instead of setting it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now we should be able to see a flying bullet. Well, I don't know where the position is going to be, but we'll see. I need to press start first. So if I put this thing down, enemies inside, we need to wait 3 seconds, and there we go. We got all the 3 bullet spawns directly from here. What I want to do now is I want to go back a second and see where they came from. And as you can tell, they come 100% out of the direction where we wanted them to be. But 20 is a bit too much, so 5 probably is a good one. And probably the guns themselves need to have a bit higher delay, like a smaller delay, like every once a second. So let's try again. If every once a second now an enemy gets shot, or bullets are going to shoot. And what you can tell now, these bullets are flying for 3 seconds in one direction, then they destroy themselves after 3 seconds. Pretty good. What you can also do is you can do like a dead zone for the bullets at the very end. So whenever they hit a dead zone, well, then they're good to go. If you want them to shoot faster, like I don't know, faster or more often, then you can say also 0.5 in a shoot delay. Or even more. So we go down with the sphere, we go enemy inside, and then they start to shoot pretty often. And if the damage is only 1 and the enemy has a health of, let's say, 20, you can do your calculations, I guess. So we now are able to place new guns. Oh, I lost my absolute phenomenal user interface. I'm gonna put this together in a second. But so we are able to place some things, and whenever enemies are inside, like whenever they are popping up anywhere, they gonna do, or they gonna do start shooting. One more thing I wanna see is if I go in here and wait a couple of seconds and then go out, you can see they stop shooting. That's because the actual on trigger exit is going to figure that the enemy has gone, so it's not in the on trigger stay anymore. So it resets whenever the actual object leaves the screen or leaves the trigger zone. What's next? Well, now we just need to put in a pool of enemies, which we can define on our own, and we spawn them at any spot we want to. We can have multiple spots. We can have 1 spot or 2 spot or whatever, and we can set spots with different delays. And then we let them move into the left direction until they reach whatever specific point. And they can do damage. Like the bullets can do, and so on and so forth. So as you can tell, in a rather short amount of time, you can prepare a rather good amount of things. Like our enemy sphere over here, I would just say, okay, I create a new empty game object and reset it. So it is like at the same height, literally, of our tiles. And this sphere, I would make it be part of that thing, but I would move the main object just to the left, as we do with the bullets to the right. So the main thing here is to rotate that let's say that enemy. Gonna rotate it by 90. So whenever we go, that the forward axis over here is again now showing into the opposite direction. Now we can reset the sphere. So put it anywhere. We can make it beautiful. We can make it ugly. We can give it any design. You can give it any enemy design if you want to. We can also do it as I did in the showcase, in which we have a sphere with probably some more spheres, or just one more sphere maybe. I didn't want it to copy this, but I can duplicate this sphere, for example. But I don't need the rigid body component on this. I just remove it. And I don't need a sphere collider on it as well. And I can put this maybe here and scale it a bit down. And give it maybe another tint. So now we have, I don't know, some weird enemy maybe. Again, design comes later. The most important thing is that you have something which works, or what works. Can also make it red. Well, red doesn't look nice. And what we now want to do is, if that is going to be our enemy, and the sphere has a different or a specific size, for example, we can put all the enemy components or the enemy content directly on top of it. Like, what do we need? We need a rigid body component, which does not have any gravity issues. We can add a sphere collider on it, like that. We can then lift it up and put it to wherever we want to, like with these little points. Just take the top point and the bottom point and bring them to the corresponding points or positions where they should be. Well, I don't know where the bottom point is going to be. There we go. It doesn't have to be precise, but, well, who cares, right? It needs to be trigger. And the final thing is, well, then we don't even need these other rigid body components here. But what we want to need is the actual tag here on the game object, on the main game object, which is going to go and, move around here. So, and what is an enemy? Well, it's nothing else than, well, yeah, what is it? Actually, it's nothing. It's just another C# script. So we can name this one enemy, and the only two things the enemies are going to do is they see how much health they have, and if they get in contact with the bullet is going to do the damage to the actual enemy and destroys the enemy whenever the enemy health is gone. How does that work is, well, rather simple again. First, in the update loop, we're gonna have a movement speed, and we're gonna literally do the same as we do here in the bullet. We just take this and put this into the update loop. We don't have speed yet, so we can literally go and take this speed variable here as well. You can make them as slow and as fast as you want, and you maybe want to give them a public int health. You can use a float as well, doesn't matter. Maybe it has a health of, I don't know, 30, 20, 60, 10, 5, up to you can be 100, and if it is a boss, then give it like 5,000. So we want this to constantly work or position itself over its forward axis, that's the Z axis over here, which is going to move it to the left. And whenever it takes damage, we want to have a public void take damage function. Take damage. And the damage taken is going to be any kind of amount. So we're going to pass in the parameter for this. And now we're going to see Maybe this is like the start health, but then we're gonna have something like a current health. It doesn't need to be public. It's just an int current health. And literally in or on start, we want to set current health to be equal to health. Like this. So we can deduct current health, but we don't have to touch the health itself. I hope that makes sense. So whenever we take damage, we're gonna deduct current health by amount. We can also say plus equals, so we can pass in a negative number, or we can say minus equal and just put in a positive number. Something like that. And then we check, like after we have deducted the current health from the amount, if the current health is actually smaller or equal 0, because we don't have anything left, then we can say we want to destroy the actual game object. Destroy game object. And that's it. That's it for taking damage for the actual parameter. If you want to put in health bars, feel free to do so. The calculation is literally rather simple over here. And that's it. And then we can also say, okay, the player maybe gets score. Or gets or gets currency, something like that, as I talked about before. Get currency. Oh, can't type today. Don't forget to save, and that's it for the enemy. Nothing else is needed because, well, it's just the same thing. It's always the same thing. We we give it a health, we give it a speed. We get at start, we just set it, and we just reposition it at every now and then by whatever the speed times time the delta time in the forward direction of the object. So that's it. And when it takes damage, the take damage comes from the bullet. So whenever we hit something which has the tag enemy, then we want to grab the content or the component from the collider. So we can say col.getComponent, and then we need to know what it is about. And we only have this enemy component, and what we want to talk to is the take damage function of the actual enemy. And then we pass in the damage from the actual bullet. That's what the gun is going to give us, and that's it. Now we can destroy the enemy at any time. We can delete it, destroy it, whenever the enemy tag is completely correct. And again, everything is driven by the bullet. It's not directly driven by the gun. The gun is just a setup to know how much damage has to be done, but that's it, nothing else. And what we now can do is we can create a prefab out of this enemy, because later on you might have different enemy types and so on. You can place them wherever you want to. And if I now would press play, we would see that the enemy, if it has the actual script, which it doesn't, that's why we get the null reference exception over here. We need to put it on top of it. We can pass over speed and health and stuff like that. And now it should move to the left automatically. It's rather quick. We still get a null reference exception because, well, I don't know, maybe we tried to get something wrong, but the speed of this enemy is too fast. So I would start with something like 0.2, 0.5, or even just a 1. So the bullet has enough space to work around that. Why do we get a null reference exception over here? Maybe I haven't saved. Could happen. So enemy has been saved, bullet has not been saved. So what we probably want to do is, if the script is accessible, like if the collider has, like if it is not null or something like that, we catch it first. So we can say, okay, we want to take enemy and catch it first. So I don't know, I just name it E, and what we want to do is we want to take a col.getComponent over there like this, and and in here we want to say E.takeDamage, but only if that has the script on it. So if E is not equal to null, which could happen sometimes if our setup is wrong. That's why probably why the null reference exceptions are going to pop up. So we save that. We should be able to check this out right now. We shouldn't have the actual problems anymore, but we also don't do any damage now because it isn't able to reach or to grab the information from this enemy over here. So the bullet again needs to talk to the enemy script and pass over the everything to the take damage function, which we got here. Current health should be there, as well as the bullet should destroy itself after taking or doing the actual damage. So we say destroy game object, so it doesn't pass through this object. So if there are like two enemy lines, that not all of them are going to be penetrated, but that could be another gun type with lower damage but can penetrate like any object. So as you can see, it destroys itself, but I don't know how high the actual health is going to be. There we go. Now the enemy has been destroyed. As you have seen, 20 seems to be quite high for this enemy health, so we can retype that over here inside this, and we of course want to, let's say, apply all or override that. So for the first enemy, this specific gun type is going to be done. So 5 bullets should be okay for that, or 10 in this case, and then the enemy should be gone. And now we have another issue. And the issue over here is, well, the object, what shall I say? This enemy does not leave. It doesn't leave the actual collider. And to do that, like whenever this is happening, before we destroy it, we want to move it to another point. So like before we do that, we want to move it away. So we can say something like transform.position is equal to, I don't know, very far away. Vector 3, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. Why is that? Oh, we need to make it so that it is a new. Why do we need to do this before we do destroy it? Well, otherwise it doesn't recognize that the object, like the enemy, is leaving the actual the collider. So it shouldn't, or hopefully it stops shooting after we are moving it away and then destroy it. So it hopefully notifies that, but as you can tell, it doesn't do it because the delay is probably not high enough. So we maybe give it a little delay over here. So we first move it away, and then we say after 1 second, after we have moved it away, we want to destroy that. Let's see if that works better, because that is the issue why the on-trigger stay does not, or the on-trigger exit is not getting, how shall I say, recognizing that this enemy is going to leave the actual collider. There we go. Now we have deleted the, actually repositioned the enemy first, and at the second point, like after 1 second, with the 1 second delay, we were able to destroy that. Nobody cares about it, but the on-trigger stay notices pretty quickly, like in 1 second. I believe we could even pop up the little delay over here a bit smaller. Maybe 0.5 should work as well. Or even smaller. It's just, we just need to have a little delay. So like after we were moving it away for the on trigger stay functionality, that should be everything we need over there. So it needs to recognize the leaving of the object outside of the collider. Let's try again, just to be sure that 0.5 delay is more than enough, which, as you can tell, it is. So everything works as it should. And the final part is you just need to spawn objects, like spawn bad guys which try to, reach the other side over there. You can do this lane based, you can do this object based. This is totally, and that's what I mean, this is totally up to you, and you can even randomize everything over there as well. And you can create small or fast enemies, you create slow enemies, and so on and so forth. So the final step for me would just create one little spawner, which is going to be able to spawn objects after whatever. So I name this maybe enemy spawner, and we can define if we want to have multiple possible like multiple positions or just one single position. So what does that mean is, for example, I can have a cube. This can be, I'm gonna rename that to be a spawner. You can name this enemy spawner, whatever. First off, I go and reset it. It doesn't have to be visible. We just need to have an object. You can even use an empty. We just need to have an object as well as its pivot point on which we can spawn the object. We don't even need a box collider, so we can remove it. So it's not in our way. Again, later on, if you don't need it, you can disable the mesh render component. It's just for setting up and probably makes it a bit easier. And on the spawner, we're gonna put the enemy spawner script and double click to open. And we're gonna take a look into it. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to like the video or the stream if you haven't already. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below in the description, not in the description, but in the comment box, as well as use the chat if it is available for you. If you have any further questions and so on and so forth. Also, if you need help for your specific game project, let me know. Just contact me over my website, and you can hire me so I can help you with your specific problem if necessary, or if you have some. And also there's a free PDF down below in the description as well, which you can earn which you can get for free from my website, about 3 strategies to finish your game. So feel free to grab it. Okay, so what does the enemy spawner need to do? Well, it needs to have a pool, literally, of all the enemies which are able to be spawned in this one level. So it is usually not needed to be a list, since you have to set them up per each level, but well, you can automate things probably later on or randomize, so a list might fit here as well. It's a type game object, and it's going to be all our enemy prefabs. And of course we want to initialize that to be a new list of type game object, open close parentheses, close the line with a semicolon, as always. What does the spawner at the very start is going to do? I don't know. But we don't want to use the actual update loop once again, because we want to use the coroutine possibilities over here. And then we can define something like, well, we need time. We need to have like a spawn time, which can be calculated automatically, let's say between 2, like a min and a max time. So how often we want to spawn, like every 1 second, every 10 seconds, every 5 seconds. How often do we want to spawn an enemy on this one particular spot? And since we want to probably we want to, let's say we have a minimum and a maximum span of time, we can do so or can use them. So a public float min time, it's like the minimum, and then we maybe have a max time, public float max time. So, and we can automate that, like every round, every time we are done with doing something, spawning something, we can randomize that to use that as a new variable. So what I want to create is another coroutine over here. When the game has been started, we want to spawn enemies. Spawn enemy. And what do we want to do is, well, we start this at the very start again, so we want to create another while loop again. So basically we do the same thing as we did with the bullet spawning inside the gun. But, well, yeah, let me take the complete, well, almost the complete stuff here. I don't need the surroundings. And let me put it in here. So we don't really have this can shoot thing here. But what we can do is, like, every time, we could even start the coroutine every time or every now and then, or we can start it from scratch whenever we are at the very end over here. So this is totally and completely up to you, or up to us, how we want to structure that. We could, and this is something different over here, we can also use not a coroutine, but for example something called what is it called? I forgot about it. I forgot the name. Invoke. There we go. So we could also use invoke or even invoke repeating. So whenever we invoke something, we can wait a specific time to run a specific method. So our spawn method could be invoked, and after we are done with that, we can do a pre-calculation. And probably for you and for us over here, for the learning perspective, let's use that. So instead of using a coroutine, we can say, okay, we want to do a void spawn enemy. But we need to do some construction here. What I mean by that is we need to pre-calculate like a min-max time, like when or what is the next time, when is the next time to do the first thing. So first time could be, let's say, minimum time, and then we can do the next time or do pre-calculate somewhere in between. So what can we do? We first off can say we want to invoke our method. And the method is going to, we need to type it into string, as you can see, string method name is going to be spawn an enemy. Then we need to define a time. The time is going to be when, like, first off we can say, okay, we want to use the minimum time. Like, if the minimum time is 1 second, then we can use that. And at the very start, we invoke it the first time we spawn an enemy. To spawn an enemy, we want to randomize the spawn as well as the next enemy. So in that case, we first off want to calculate which of the enemies we're gonna do or we wanna take over here. So we can say something like int index. You can also name this enemy index or whatever. It's going to be equal a random number between actually random.range between 0 and the length of our enemy prefab list. So enemy prefabs. Of course, dot length. No, not length, but count, since we are using a list. Length would be the array, count is going to be the list. So this is going to be our index. Currently we only have one enemy type, but we can simply create a second one if we want to, for example. So this one we want to instantiate. We want to instantiate this one with this one index at the position where this object is going to be, the spawner is going to be, at the rotation the spawner is going to be if needed. So in that case we can say we want to spawn the enemy prefabs in square brackets, and then we can take the index, so the pre-calculated index over here, and then we can define where we want to put this into transform.position, so which is going to be the position of the object where the script is on, as well as the transform.rotation of the object if we have rotated it correctly with the Z axis to the left. So it takes the same input literally of the object. Now we want to calculate a new spawn time, and spawn time is going to be random.range. We could even outsource that one between the min time and the max time, and we could even do this for the very first time over here. So we just set a new spawn time, and now the fun part begins. We can do the same thing. We can invoke the next method call for spawn enemy after spawn time, like the newly created or newly calculated one. So we can do the same here, and we can do say, okay, at the very start, I'm gonna copy this piece now, copy, and put this into the start method. And now we can also do, instead of using min time, use spawn time. So because we have pre-calculated between the minimum and the maximum time. Don't forget to save, and now we should be able to use our enemy spawner to spawn any random enemy from the list of the spawner. And we can create multiple spawner and multiple timers in between them. If you want to do this later on a bit more, let's say, different, you can also take all the spawners transform positions and randomize this transform position as well. Now I have one spawner. I can say minimum time is 1, maximum time is 3, so every between 1 and 3 seconds I want to spawn a prefab. And now I just go into my prefabs folder, take my first enemy for example and put it in here. And I can also create another one. I control D that and say enemy 2, and I don't know, maybe I change the stats to be a 0.5 and give it a bit more health, a bit less health because it's faster, I don't know. And then I take this enemy prefab and bring this in here as well, create a new original prefab. I can even go in here into the prefab itself with the double click, as I told you before, and we can go and make this a bit more I don't know, different. So we see a difference between them two. I could even say, okay, one of them balls here is maybe, nope, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to color that. So we have a difference between the two. We can, again, design comes later. That doesn't really matter. And so we have now enemy 2 and an enemy 1. I can get rid of them out of the scene because we don't need them anymore. But the spawner now needs to know about enemy 2 as well. So I take enemy 2 and put this into enemy prefabs. So we have the possibility to choose between the two. We can do Control D for the spawner over here. Again, this has nothing to do. And we can take now, or yeah, delete them guns here. And we can say, okay, we place the guns, which is going to now, or rather quickly or rather soon, finalizes my live stream over here. So we are able to place the guns we wanted to place beforehand. So I'm gonna go and say, create a new canvas. I need to make sure the event system is in here. I want to create a new UI button for my gun 1. I'm gonna rename it to have the text gun 1 again. Don't need the enter button. Can duplicate this, rename this one to be gun 2, which is fine. Both of the guns do need the on-click event for my game manager, wherever it is. I don't have a game manager, which is cool. Then I need to create a new one. Game manager. Gonna put the game manager script on top of it. So we gonna create, or we have the tower prefabs. So first is going to be gun 1, second one is gun 2. That's it, nothing else needed. And those two buttons now need the on-click event from the game manager, and the function is called set, or actually select tower. And the first button for the gun 1 is have the element 0 or the index 0. The second one should have the index 1. So game manager is in place. We should be able to place towers right now in front of the enemies, and we should be able to delete them or destroy them. So I go to 2D mode just again, because we forgot one, or I forgot one thing. I want to make sure that scale with screen size is on. So, and I'm gonna put my buttons here anywhere in the scene, so I have the possibility to create any nice whatever interface. This is totally up to you again. And for the prototyping stage, this should be almost okay. So we should be able to place a gun over there. Oh, this is funny. The spawn manager or the spawner or rotations seems to be wrong. Yep, they do. So I need to rotate this spawner by 90 and this one by 90, because the forward axis of the spawner was looking upwards instead of to the left. So again, each of them spawners should create any random enemies over here. So we have the slow ones, we have the fast ones, and we should be able to place guns onto our cubes. But these do not have my tile scripts, so I pretty quickly put the tiles on so they know about that and they are able to be placed with our objects over here. I always do the same mistakes, literally, which means I want to do a save pretty quick here. So the scene has been saved with all my settings, and now I can place a gun here and a gun here. And whenever the enemies are going to go into them, they should be able to shoot. The shoot delay of the guns seem to have changed over here, but I haven't changed them inside the prefabs. So the shoot delay might be on the first gun something like 0.5, and on the second gun probably something like a 0.8, because it has more bullets. And so if you do the changes again inside the prefabs, you can, you know, put in all the stuff over there. Fun part, I cannot place another gun over there, which could be because of, well, there are multiple reasons. There is how shall I say, in front of this gun there is this large a box collider. So if we're gonna take a pretty close look to this gun, you can see if there's a box collider, which is currently a trigger, we are unable to bypass with our mouse click. We are unable to bypass this box collider over here. So we cannot directly bypass this. So instead of using the on-click event for that, we would need to, let's say, use a raycast, which is able to ignore layers over there. But I believe we have done enough over here for this. So if you are interested into more of that, well, feel free to let me know in the comments down below under the video. I know it's not complete yet, but you get the idea. And if you now take it from this point over here by doing one or two things, for example, the enemy could now, instead of using an on trigger on the gun, instead of using on trigger stay, we can also use a raycast and shoot it to the right over a specific length, so we are able to, to do something. With the raycast shooting to the right, we need to still make sure that we don't shoot against other towers, which do have colliders as well. So using the raycasts might be way better than using just simple collider things over here. But that is like, we can implement this shooting, or this possibility for shooting, like if the ray is touching something, we can put this into the coroutine here as well. We could even visualize that about the length, how long is the actual, the length of the ray, and is it actually connecting, is it touching something? So instead of, later on, if it doesn't touch anything, then we don't need to move it away. So the ray is like constantly constantly trying to find something which it is able to touch. So you can put this into the update loop. Yeah, but I don't like to work inside the update loop. But on the other hand, while true, you can always shoot a ray and set the can shoot if you hit a collider with an enemy tag. This is actually rather quickly done. So first off, you need to shoot a ray to the right, or in this case to the forward axis. So you create a new ray, well, actually we can just say, I guess, just like that. The origin is just a forward axis, and that should be it. We need to have a raycast hit We can name it hit. And what we need to do is a physics check. So if physics, and you can read about all of that always inside the Unity reference, so don't forget that. If physics.raycast, so if we shoot a raycast from our ray, and then we can say out hit, then we can define a maximum distance, which would be, let's say, 5. Then we can define a layer, well, a layer mask if we want to. So we can say only enemy layers, for example, or only this or only that. And that's what we can do here at this point. We don't need those. So if we are hitting something, we can check against that. The ray, actually, we can use the ray, or we can set up the ray to be equal to a new ray, in which we can, or we should, be able to define the actual origin as well as the direction. The origin could be anywhere. It could be like the spawn point position. So, which is a transform. So spawn or bullet spawns might be a bad one. So we can also say something like game objects, like transform.position, and then we need to lift up the raycast a bit by, let's say, 0.5 meter, or even 0.2 would be more than enough probably. So a new vector 3. And then we lift it, we don't do anything on X, we just want to lift it up in the Y axis. So let's say 0.05 or 0.5 should be more than enough. Let's take 0.5. So we don't go under the playfield or somewhere else on a weird position. So we just lift the raycast up and see what's going to be at this point. Next one is we need another parenthesis here and a comma, and then we say the direction. In this case, we want to use the forward direction, so wherever our gun is looking. So we shoot now this ray, this new ray, and we see whatever the hit is going to be. And now we can recheck if hit dot, and then we check the collider, and then we can compare the tag. And if the tag is going to be again an enemy tag, then we can say do something like do the shooting delay stuff over here like this. Copy, paste. We can also say we just set can shoot is equal to true. That's possible as well, and can shoot is going to do its own thing. Otherwise, like if that is not the case, we of course want to make sure that can shoot is going to reset to be false. And usually you don't do this here, but you do this like here. After the physics check, literally, we should be able to reset can shoot to be false, because we haven't done anything over here. We haven't hit anything which returns an actual true. Again, this can be changed here and there. There might be some things we want to take a look into, so we don't really necessarily have to take this on trigger stay, on trigger enter pieces anymore. And we should be able to get rid now of the length of the actual box colliders, because we only need them to be here. Otherwise, we may or may not be able to, let's say, destroy this object. Like, now we are able to destroy the object. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we only check one specific layer, which we can pass in. I'm gonna update the gun here as well. Holding control gives me the possibility to, do all this things. And let me introduce the layer mask for the gun pretty quick. So it's going to be a public layer mask layer, You can check for multiple layers, but what I want to introduce here is just one. So first, this is the important thing. We need to define a length, and then we can say we want to use the layer. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work without the length of the ray. We could even visualize the ray. Like, we can draw the ray over its complete length, or at least in the direction where it is. And that should be pretty much it. So both of them should work the way they do. I'm gonna save again just in case and try to build a gun. And it doesn't shoot yet. The size is 5, or the raycast size is 5, as well as we don't have any layers to check. So, and these enemies over here, I want them to have their own layer. So I create an enemy layer. So we only do something if we see something inside the enemy layer. And if we go into the gun, we can now choose the actual enemy layer here. Same for gun 2, we can choose the enemy layer to check. Now we can test again. We should be able to see them. I placed it here because I want to see the length of 5 should be somewhere here, depending on where it should be. And then once there's somebody close to the ray, I don't know what the 5 or the ray length 5 is going to be. It doesn't seem to do anything, at least not for the moment. So it might not be able to leave the actual gun itself. But you'll get there, or we'll get there, and you'll get there as well. So let's see, new ray. We lift it up by 0.5. Maybe we're gonna draw the ray. Meanwhile, it's there. So we can say debug dot draw ray, and we wanna use the start, which is going to be actually the ray dot origin. And then we're gonna have the ray direction, which is going to be the ray dot direction. So we could even give it a color like white or red or whatever, but that doesn't matter. Even a small drawn ray would help us to see where it is. So as you can see, the actual rotation of the ray is wrong. It is like showing upwards, and that's why it is like not looking into the correct, let's say, rotation. It seems, at least. So the objects transform forward axis. That's what we need to take a look into first. Like when I place a gun here or anywhere, if it let me. If I place that gun, I want to see what this gun's rotation, or actually the gun's orientation is. And as we can tell, this gun orientation, or the forward orientation, is actually wrong. So how can we fix that? We can go into this, and we should be able to rotate the complete object, as well as the basically these objects over here. Let me try that. I want to do it globally. I'm gonna do a change, and I just want to see what's going to happen if I do that. Like if I use gun 1, then now it's pointing upwards. So whenever we place that gun on the tile, we are using the actual rotation of the tile. So I haven't rotated the tiles, it seems. Like each of them tiles, if I go here, we can see that they are rotating, yeah, this way. So in that case, I want to go in each of them tiles or cubes and rotate them But I want to do this like globally and pivot by pivot, just by 90 degrees. And can do the same for the other tiles here at the bottom as well. Hold down Control, snap rotate to the left or to the right in this case. So each of them now, when we are going here and local, like the local one is the one we are actually looking for those. So these tiles now all locally look to the right. So our gun will do the same. I want to do the same thing for these parts here as well. Center, and I go global in this case and just rotate them up. So the gun rotation is locally looking upwards. So the tiles have to do the same thing. So the raycast is going to work at the same rotation. Don't forget to save, press play, and see if that works now. So placing one gun 1, and once again, after a distance of 5, like it should be somewhere here, the gun should start to shoot, and let's see if that works. So the ray is looking into the corresponding to the correct rotation over here, but there are no gun bullets being created so far. So somewhere might be a little bug, or the layer is not correct, or my enemies are not set correct. Yep, so this layer for enemy 1 here, and this layer, actually we don't need to do this for the children object over here. Yes, change children. I'm gonna do the same. Open the transform again and somehow root in as a prefab. I'm gonna do enemy and say no to object, just only this object. And now the raycast should notify everybody who is going to be on. There's a little offset. Okay, and there we go. Now the gun is starting to shoot because of the distance of 5. And if there wouldn't be any more enemies, then there shouldn't be any issue with that. There's one more flaw, probably one more flaw. No, we actually erased the possibility for that flaw. I do it through the rotation. I have a little offset over here, which is okay, easy to fix. But as we can see, we should now be able to put a gun, another gun in front of it, and another gun, and even more guns, like one after another. So multiple guns next to each other, as long as we are, let's say, not touching any other of them collider objects over there, depending on the you know, tiles themselves. So because each of them guns has the big box collider around it, so we could make it a bit smaller, so we are not able to touch it with the mouse whenever we want to place a gun on any of the other tiles. So the final fix would be just fixing the actual position of the cube and its corresponding objects to be centered, which is, like, as you can tell, if I take, let me make them child of the cube. If I take the cube here, I would need to go and bring this a bit to the left and a bit like over here in the Z. So it's centered again. And same for the second gun object. It's like this cube is the bottom, and I'm gonna make everything here now part of the cube. It doesn't matter where they are, as long as the cube is going to be back to be centered over here in the object, so it lands directly in the center of this object. And if we want to lift up, we can simply do so. So the box is like not in the ground. We can do the same here. Lift it up until we don't see the grid actually passing by or passing through it anymore. Don't forget to save. And now you should have a Resogut play around prototype for Plants vs. Zombies. There are just some flaws or some things you need to take a look into is the coins. Like, we haven't implemented the coin base yet, but that is something rather simple. Just take a look into the game manager, see, are there enough coins to purchase this gun? Yes, no. If that is the case, well, purchase the gun, otherwise just don't do it. And of course, if an enemy touches a gun, probably the gun goes boom. Or maybe the enemy can do damage to the gun, so you can lose guns here as well, and you can go and buy and purchase more and more guns, which are able or allowed to, do damage to all the enemies which are going to be spawned currently randomly from our spawn objects. Again, then we just have the lose condition, which is going to sit on the other side, where you're gonna have maybe another box or cube on the end of the lane. Whenever some enemy touches that, then the game is over. So, but that is just some things you have learned already. It's like on trigger enter. If an enemy enters the trigger of the dead zone, well, then it is what it is, and you lose the game and you go out of it. But now you have literally everything necessary set it up for a Plants vs. Zombies game. And once again, you can take these spawn objects here and make them part of a lane. Like maybe this is a part of lane 1, I guess. So if you move this lane, the spawner is going to follow up. Same for the second lane. You can take the spawner, make it part of the second lane. No issues with that, because the spawner doesn't care. And then you can tell, okay, I create more lanes. You can just Control D to duplicate. I'm maybe gonna put some more here. And the latest lane, like this one here, I just get rid of it, so I have like a playfield of 5. And in that way, also, if you go maximize on play, you can now go and place some gun. Hope that the spawn delays are pretty high right now, so you probably are not able to get anything in place. So maybe you want to take the spawner as an extra and maybe set it up so that, for example, each of them is not having so small amount of time. So maybe you start with 3 and end with something like 10 maybe. So each of them spawners. And you can, by the way, copy this complete copy this complete component, and you can tell every spawner, and we can even look for them by using the search, every spawner, and we can say we want to paste the component values so everybody gets the same values in this game. And now you have your first, probably first prototype for Plants vs. Zombies. So once again, this is going to be, or can be even made even more beautiful. Once again, the most important thing is, now I would have lost here. The most important thing over here is just get things running, get things into play, and see where issues are. Try to figure them out, try to debug code and lines of code. If something is not working, try to figure out why is that the case. Why why does code not work, for example? And once you get at this point, you have pretty quickly, in a rather short amount of time, a pretty decent prototype. I may go and work a bit more on the prototype and maybe bring it into a bit more polished state. I'm gonna put this onto my website, OctoManGames.com, probably for you to purchase over there if you want to work on that, or you're gonna figure out on your own how things are going to work and maybe are going to be a bit more beautiful in the end. So as you can see, spawner works pretty good. They are not too much spawned at this current time. Also the guns are working great, doing a bunch of damage over here. So once again, if you like that stream, don't forget to thumb this video or this live stream up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and see you in one of my other videos and live streams over here. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you do so, let me know in the community tab what you want to learn more, and or even not. I don't know. Let me know what you want to learn, and probably I am going to cover your next theme or your next content here. And yeah, let me know when you need help. Have a good one, and see you soon. Bye bye.